Hello everyone. For my assignment 3, I chose the film Mommie, Dearest, so let's get into it. I will be focusing on Joan Crawford. She is the main character in the film. Joan's symptoms are she is obsessed with cleanliness, prone to volatile mood swings. She has the idea that she is in competition with her daughter and several other people in the film. She thinks people are secretly or openly plotting against her, and she's always picture ready and very concerned with her public image. What psychological disorders is Joan suffering from? At first glance, we can tell Joan probably has obsessive compulsive disorder. Later on, we can see that she may have borderline personality disorder and also narcissistic personality disorder. Obsessive compulsive disorder. In the very first scene, we see Joan doing her morning ritual, which we can assume is the exact same every single morning. She scrubs her arms all the way up to the elbows in scalding hot water with soap. While her OCD seems mild at first, it progressively seems to get worse as she loses control of her daughter throughout the film. She is a clean freak. You see her several times on her hands and knees, scrubbing what looks like a perfectly clean floor. The second psychological disorder would be borderline personality disorder. Throughout the film, Joan has several mood swings that are triggered by events seemingly unfitting of such anger. She is impulsive and self-destructive. She turns to drinking excessive amounts of alcohol and destroys her own garden. And she often feels alone. So in the film, she will go into a seething rage, like her daughter playing in the mirror. She thinks that the daughter is mocking her, so she cuts off all of her hair. The third disorder I want to touch upon is narcissistic personality disorder. Joan is a movie star, so naturally she may have a big ego, but she does have a sense of entitlement when it comes to everyone's adoration of her, getting the best scripts, etc. At no point in the film does she express empathy towards her daughter or guilt for the abuse she's inflicted on her. She is also controlling, and when she loses control, the more volatile she gets. This happens both in her career and with her daughter. No wire hangers. If you haven't seen this movie, you have probably still heard this line somewhere at some point in your life, because it is probably more famous than the film itself. The wire hanger scene, in my opinion, hits all of her psychological disorders. I think this scene depicts her OCD and BPD very well. Her mood swings, and she goes from wanting to beat her child and then asking if she scrubbed the floor, and next thing you know, they're both on hands and knees on the floor scrubbing. She mentions how she's getting old. She mentions that the daughter doesn't care for her and she doesn't care about her clothes. And Joan Crawford is just completely unhinged in this scene. I am not one of your fans. I think Joan's narcissism comes to a head in this scene where she chokes Christina. Joan did not like being embarrassed in front of company by being called out for lying. She told her guest that Christina was suspended from school, but in reality, Joan pulled her out of the school, and Christina told her the truth. So an argument ensues, and no one's told Joan that kids tend to take more than they give. She accuses Christina of taking, and that she never loved her. She says, "Why can't you give me the love that I'm entitled to?" When in reality, we're not entitled to somebody's love, ever. Genetics or environmental? It was probably both. I think it's always both. I don't think you can have a psychological disorder without your genetics coming into play at some point. As an adult, I can say Joan was probably given the big ego because she was in Hollywood since she was 16. And is very used to being the center of attention. At one point, she was like the biggest starlet. I did some research on the real Joan Crawford, and there were some major events in her life that I think could contribute to her behavior in her adulthood, including poverty, having 3 stepfathers coming in and out of her life, and her own biological father not sticking around, and the speculation of molestation as a child by one of said stepfathers. Treatment. I think psychotherapy, also known as talk therapy, would be the best route. Mood stabilizers for the mood swings or an antidepressant. Learning to recognize and manage her emotions, and just learning overall different coping mechanisms for herself. Like most psychological disorders, Joan's will not go away overnight, or probably ever. It is a lifelong struggle for a lot of people, but with proper treatment and coping mechanisms, it can make your hard days easier, and along the way she can mend the relationships that she has hurt and go on to live a normal life with healthy relationships. The impact. Aside from her lawyer/lover, Greg Savitt, the maid, and her children, no one witnesses Joan's mood swings, at least not in the film. She is always pleasant in front of her company. So socially, I think, had it come out, if she had these psychological disorders, she would have been ostracized a lot faster, especially back in that era. Her daughter, however, is very much affected. As a child, she's walking on eggshells around Joan. She's fearful and resentful towards her as she gets older. And this also follows her into adulthood, where you can see the relationship is still quite tense. She doesn't quite trust her mother whenever there is sort of a sentimental moment going on between them. She always thinks that the next moment she's just going to flip that switch. Personal thoughts. For most of my life, I grew up with someone very close to me who has some similar issues to Joan's in the film. My oldest sister has bipolar disorder that she, for the most part, left untreated. I try not to judge those who have not learned or don't want to manage their psychological disorders. I don't think Joan is devoid of love for her daughter. She wants what's best for her daughter, and she thinks that she is teaching her the best ways in some of these scenes where I think she's coming off as it's tough love, but in reality it's just straight up abuse. I also don't blame Christina for, pretty much writing this entire memoir that paints her mother in this light, because her mother did not take any sort of responsibility for her abuse and the trauma that she caused to her daughter.